Hey guys, I'm Todd Duncan and I'm here in my studio today, or my makeshift studio, I guess. We're going to be going over workshop number 3, and it's called Storytelling Through Light. And essentially what we've got here is a typical portrait light setup with 4 lights, possibly even a fifth with the bounce today. And essentially I'm going to be explaining what the names of all the lights are called, which is super important because you need to be able to explain to your crew easily and efficiently the different types of lights that we're pointing out to. And we're going to talk about mainly telling a story or telling a narrative through the lights that we're using. So stick with us and we'll be back with you soon. Thanks. I'm setting up this first light, and we want to call our first light that we use on a set that actually helps shapes and molds the subject, the key light. Okay? So I'm actually setting up the modifier, not the light, but this is the modifier we're going to be using for our key light or the main light. This is a deep dish parabolic. So this actual light source is, typically, it's like a softbox, but the actual shadows have a little bit more contrast to them. So they're great when you want to get a lot of nice shadow underneath the jawline, when you want to really accentuate some of the features of the face. Okay guys, so we chatted about the main and key light last time. This is the light that actually creates the actual shape or the mood of the subject's face. It creates the shape, texture. Now we're going to talk about the fill light. This is light number 2. This is the fill light. And this, as the name suggests, it fills in the shadow, casting from the main light. So it's going to fill in the shadow. So or in other words, it's actually going to potentially lower the contrast ratios between the darks and the lights. And typically this is always, well, yeah, right behind the camera essentially. And of course the modifier we use, usually the bigger the light source, the softer the light quality is. So I'm using, this is an actual soft lighter, maybe about a 30-inch soft lighter. This is your fill light. And of course I'll extend this nice and high as well because you want to have enough shadow underneath the chin. You don't want to have the light too close down on the ground, have it nice and high in the air. Okay everybody, so now we're on to the third light source we're using for the shoot today. This is going to be called a rim light. Okay, this is a rim light or a backlight. Basically, it's behind the subject. Subject's here, the key light's camera left, the fill light's right behind the photographer. The rim light is behind the subject. We call it a rim or a backlight. And essentially the purpose of this is to create an edge on the surface of the subject, typically behind the subject's head, the hair, the shoulder. And so the modifier we're using is a 3-foot gridded softbox, but you can use even just a dish. It doesn't have to be, essentially you're just creating some separation on the subject's back against the backdrop, and you're creating a little bit more, I guess in a sense, more drama and shape on the subject's body. Okay, so now we're on to the fourth light. This is called your background light. Pretty simple. It's basically, again, separating the subject to the background. So typically you use a background light when the background typically can be dark. We call this a floating head, where the subject's dark hair or dark clothing actually blends into the background. So you have to use an extra light to hit the background. So here we've got an X60 lithium Godox speed light, but of course you can use any type of modifier. This is going to be just a speed light with a little honeycomb grid on it here, just to create a little bit of texture and light on the background. Okay, the final piece we've got from our lighting equipment here. This is the cheapest piece in your arsenal of lighting. It's a reflector, but they're super vital to have when you're photographing portraits. It's a silver or a white bounce or a reflector, and I usually typically have them underneath where the subject's jaw is to fill in some shape or fill in some shadow, depending on the subject's face. Again, we're trying to tell a story, a narrative in your portrait. So these are very, very crucial to have. Okay, so we've got 5 different names of lights that we're using on the set. Okay, we've got the key main light, we've got the fill light, we've got the back or the rim light, and we've got the background light, and then we also have a reflection or a reflector as well, which is not really a light, but it's an indirect light source. The last light I do want to bring up is called a practical light. Now, what's a practical light? A practical is a light source that is already on set. Typically, it's ambient light that's coming in, whether it's streaming in from a low sunlight coming in, or it could be a lamp from above on a street somewhere. So that's also important to realize. When you set up for a shoot, find your practical lights and ask yourself, do you want to actually incorporate that type of light into your shot as well. And we'll talk more about practical lighting on a future workshop, but it's very, very key to understand your practical light sources and if you want to actually leverage them in your actual portraits that you're taking. We're going to do the main light source, the main key light source on Sarah first. So we're going to be actually utilizing this one only. We're starting off with this one. It's an additive approach to lighting. And this is what happens whenever you're on set. The first thing is to put your tripod down, put your camera down on the tripod, find the right lens, and then we look at our first light like we talked about on the subject, right? And again, the first light's the key light. And we're going to start off with this one right now, okay? So essentially, it's always going to be higher than the model typically. You always want to try to replicate sun, right? And typically the sun's nice and high. So essentially, it's going to be about 5 or 6 inches higher than the model's jawline, okay? Using an old school light meter or flash meter, okay? And it's they're very important to use because we are actually determining the power of the flash according to what f-stop you want to be shooting at. So with this portrait, typically an f-stop would be, I would say typically for portraits, if you want to blur the background out, you want to use maybe 5.6, maybe f8, depending on your lens. So I want to get 5.6 on the exposure from this flash. Now, I'll go more into this on a more of an intermediate workshop, but essentially I have to actually meter each of these lights to make sure that I get my f5.6, okay? So I'm going to try this right now, and that's almost 5.6 right there at 200 ISO. Okay, Sarah, so you have a preferred side that you usually shoot on, or is it?
I feel like my right side might be better.
Okay.
But.
Okay, what's up? No, let's point your toes this way this time. That's just, yeah, there we go, and eyes on me. Yeah, okay, that's good. So maybe just for intensive purposes, let's just go straight on though for the first shoot, just so I get like a nice sort of like even balanced face on this. So just throw your hair back. That's right, you just read my mind. That's good. Perfect.
It has a mind of its own sometimes.
Yeah. That was the first light source that we just used, the key and main light, which is right here. Now I'm going to use some creativity now, and it's just, instead of having it right in front of the model, I'm going to now turn it or change the direction, and let's wrap it around her face more. Let's really cheat more and put it right around like this, right to the side. Let's see the effect of how it's going to shape around her face. Remember, we're using one light source, only the key and the main light right now. Let's see what we get out of this. Basically, this definitely does create a lot of shape on the face. It's pretty moody. I wouldn't be using this light source. I wouldn't be using this direction on Sarah. Maybe on an edgy character actor I would maybe, but not for like a fashion model or So therefore, I can play with this light source and keep it in this direction. But let's use the fill light now just to fill in the shadow on her other side of her face. I'll show you the difference. Okay, when we put the fill light on. Okay, fill light now. So now we're on to light number 2, or fill light. We're going to keep the main light on, obviously. The fill light acts to balance out the shadow on the shadow side. So of course, again, I want to meter this light to make sure that it's not overpowering this light too much. This is where it gets a little bit complicated with the science involved. Yeah, it's F2. Okay, so that's F2. That means that's 2 stops less power than this, which is good. I don't want this fill light to overpower, right? I just want to get a little bit of catch light in her eyes just to fill in a little bit of the shadow if needed, right? If needed. But in this case, I'm just going to be adding it in. You don't always have to have a fill light. You can just have one light. One large light source can be enough sometimes, right? It just depends on the look and the feel that you're doing, what's motivating the actual narrative of the portrait we're doing today, right? So she's a beauty model. So typically I probably would not use one light. I might use a fill light just to fill in and make it nice and softer on the face. It's right here, Sarah, perfect. One more time. Open up those lips a little bit. That's nice and soft. There we go. That's nice right there. Okay, so now we're on to the third light. This is getting exciting, guys, okay? We're starting to shape light around the model, around Sarah here, okay? The third light, remember, is a fill or a rim light here. Okay, it's already set up. Let's see what we get from it, okay? Here we go. I like how you changed your arm. That was great. Perfect. Good, that's nice. Okay, so that's the rim light on the back of the head. See how it separates?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, get a little bit of separation there. Especially if models, like she's got actually perfect hair because it's not too bright, not too dark, but you get maybe like a darker haired model and it's black on black, you really have to use a rim light. And that's why it's always important to ask the agency that you're shooting for, or any of the talent, you know, get as much information as you can on the model, especially what color their hair is, because if they show up and they have like jet black hair, you got to go and get 2 more lights set up, right? So, okay, great, now we're on to the 4th light. We're almost in the home stretch here. This is a really crucial light, well, like we talked about. It's the background light, and it's this little small one here. Again, it doesn't have to be a small speed light, but in this case it is. And it's going to emit light to hit the background, so we brighten up the background a little bit. Like a good tip too is, and this is again more of an intermediate skill when using strobes, is you can always just feather it just even a couple inches. It doesn't have to be like bang on sometimes. If you get a hot spot on the forehead or something, or on the face, especially when you're feathering, when the light is a large light source, you can always just feather it a little bit, just so it softens the light around the face so you don't get these sort of unattractive hot spots. So instead of bang on, I'm just gonna by about an inch this way. Let's see if it makes any difference on her. That's good right there. Nice big, nice strong jawline that way. That's good. Here we go. Raise that chin. A little squint. That's great. The catch lights, that's the little light reflection in the eyes, are really essential to see. So that's your main light, and that's your fill light right there, right? That's the catch lights of the eyes. You know, what Sarah just mentioned is it's amazing, like the accumulative effect of all the lights, right? And as the camera's been panning around, a lot of corporate clients don't realize how much lighting is actually around the subject. You know, in fashion, they get it, they're in front of the camera all the time, but it's amazing to think it's 4 lights plus a reflector here. It's a lot of work just for the setup alone, right? Just for a simple portrait. You know, when you're setting up lights of this nature, we've got the light names being key, main, fill, background, and backlight. But when we're actually setting up the lights, and regardless of whatever light setup you're doing, whether it is ambient or studio, you always have to be aware of your lighting. And so what the awareness of lighting really means is understanding 3 terms or 3 elements. And we call this, the 3 elements are the direction of lighting, where the actual lights are coming from, where the light is being emitted from, the source of the light, and the direction. We can manipulate that in terms of creating a story and creating a narrative. The second one is color. Makes sense. Adding color to your actual light, to your actual portraits, and especially creating a story in terms of adding warmth to the story or a cool tone. The third element of awareness of lighting is called the intensity of your lights, or the quality of your lights. So, and we'll talk about more about that in more of a intermediate class I'll be teaching you in terms of the actual lighting modifiers you see behind me, the correct modifiers that we'll use. And that's super crucial when you're actually, again, creating story and a narrative, whether you're shooting portraits or a pair of shoes, okay? It doesn't matter what the subject is. It's using the right modifiers with the right direction and incorporating color. And that's all called having proper awareness of lighting. Hey, thanks for watching, guys. So again, I'm Todd Duncan with Todd Duncan Studios. And if you want to learn more about how I lit these images using those elements I just discussed, sign up to watch my future videos.